In studio today, joining me is Josh Ryan, here to talk about some of the local sports that have happened this past weekend in the border city. And kicking it off, we'll throw it to the Lloyd Comp High School basketball tournament, the Hugh Morrell basketball tournament there, which saw some good competition throughout the 2 days there.
It certainly did. Not necessarily the results that the local teams were looking for. Obviously, Lloyd Comp women winning, and they go on to the second round after beating their crosstown rival in Holy Rosary. All other, as a result, Lloydminster-based teams not advancing. So there's still plenty of great basketball to be played. Obviously, it's one of the biggest events of the year for basically both high schools in terms of the basketball going-ons. Maybe the standout of the tournament, though, was from the women's winner in Camrose.
Yeah, for sure. Camrose, they saw a team with a ton of three-point shooters. One girl, Kia Eason, hitting 7 throughout that game. So 21 points alone in just three-pointers. She helped carry her team to a 5-point win late in the fourth quarter. That was Camrose High School over Lillian Osborne High School out of Edmonton. And also Lillian Osborne had a good showing there as their men's team won the championship, beating Strathcona Christian Academy out of Sherwood Park, SCA. And SCA was actually the team that took Holy Rosary out of the tournament. So they made it all the way there, and that was another one, hard-fought game all the way down to the last minute of that one.
Absolutely. And again, that's a really strong set of teams. So even though you can see the Lloyd Comp and the Holy Rosary teams not having a lot of success necessarily in terms of winning, they are playing very high competition, and that stuff does bode well for when their zone and regional qualifiers come up.
For sure, for sure. It just preps you for that next level. Another couple teams that saw some good competition this weekend were the Lakeland Rustlers, different court teams. And we'll kick it off with basketball, which I guess the women's team saw, quite a few high notes, and the men were a little bit of ups and downs there, Josh.
Ups and downs is an understatement, unfortunately. This team has been a team of momentum throughout the last couple of years. They tend to go on long runs and give up long runs, unfortunately. It's exciting when they go on the long runs to come from behind. When they lose after holding a 25-point lead like they did on Saturday against the division's worst team, or second worst team, I should say, that is a tough pill to swallow. And as a result of losing in overtime after being up by 25 points, they're going to have some work ahead of them if they want to make playoffs.
For sure. They're in a little bit of a standings battle there with Nate, who they play in one of their last series of the season. How important is that one, Josh, to try and potentially sweep but get at least one win out of that series specifically?
If you want to do the math alone, you have to at minimum win one game. If you look at it realistically between the remaining teams they play, they basically have to sweep that weekend because they need to have the tiebreaker against that team. And they've lost a game to Grand Prairie that Nate has not. Nate has already played Grand Prairie 4 times and won all 4 games. So that's going to be a tough one to overcome for the men for sure.
And in this weekend as well, the women's team kind of dominated, sweeping their series there. And, from breaking it down, it was a lot of the bigs playing, down, getting the ball in the paint and some dirty points there.
Yeah. I mean, dirty might be a strong word to use, but Bilgay Topologlu and Brianne Hergot definitely dominated all weekend long. Grand Prairie, the weakest team in the division, doesn't really have a girl over 6 feet who can contend with either of them, and they're 2 of the best bigs in the conference, particularly Topologlu offensively. So a pretty easy weekend in some respects. They were basically, the focus became at that point working on certain plays within their system in terms of passing the ball here, passing the ball there, not necessarily just taking easy baskets, and they still won by a minimum. I think 28 points was the win on Saturday. So now they head off to France. They have a couple of games there, which will be a fun weekend for them, I'm sure, before they come back, where they will also take on the Naydukes.
There'll be a lot of great experience, getting that international play and just being able to see how, different places play and having to adapt to different play styles is huge, especially, when you're looking to make a big run going into the playoffs. Another team who's hoping to get a run into the playoffs is the men's volleyball team, but they had a pretty major setback this weekend.
So they certainly did. So team captain Matt Peck goes down with an ankle injury. He's at least out for 2 weeks. They'll reevaluate him basically in a week, but it's not looking good even though they are in a good position in the standings.
Yeah, that's a tough one for the Rustlers team there. Hopefully somebody can take over the spot that Peck is leaving in that lineup. in studio once again with Josh Ryan, this time to talk about some pro topics over the weekend. And I know everybody's going to be talking about the Super Bowl. We'll get to that in a second. First off, we'll kick it off with the Battle of Alberta, the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers. And one of the best showdowns, one of the best rivalries, for me at least, in recent memory here, Josh.
I think people are just happy to have the Battle of Alberta back. We kind of have joked and, kind of talked hopefully about the battle coming back, but it really hasn't been relevant since at least, the mid-2000s. And even then, I don't think it was fully alive. And that was back when both teams had made the playoffs, obviously 2006, a very memorable year for the Oilers. When you have to really almost go back to the 90s. Now you have two teams that are both at least in playoff contention at minimum, maybe Stanley Cup championship contention, and they hate each other. None of that stuff at the All-Star game about having fun and passing to each other and scoring goals and hugging it out at the end, that's all fake. Clearly these two teams do not like each other whatsoever. After the shootout win for the Flames, where David Riddick obviously enjoyed his win a little bit more than some goaltenders do, that didn't play well with the Oilers, and they came back with a vengeance. The Flames did not come out with the energy they needed and could not match the Oilers' speed or burst until they started fighting as the game went on. But yeah, a good old goalie battle with Cam Talbot losing one to Mike Smith, and this is one that I think hockey fans will definitely remember for a while. You can't pay enough money to have these two teams play in the playoffs this spring.
For sure, just I guess kicking it back a ways to the spark, to Chuck and Cassian little feud there with each other calling one another out, and Chuck even saying, stay off the tracks if you don't want to get hit kind of thing. And I think that just from there, it almost a snowball effect. When you got Nugent Hopkins and Monahan fighting the game before, that things are just going to keep on escalating there. And like you said, the Talbot-Smith fight there, that was one for the ages. And man, not only can Mike Smith play the puck, he can also throw absolute bombs. He connected on quite a few there. So as a fan of the game, that was electric to watch there.
Yeah, we keep talking about player safety in hockey, and yet if the vast majority of people who watch the game still love seeing hockey fights happen. And I dare you to find me someone who doesn't like to see a goalie fight happen. So now we can't wait again until these two teams play. And again, fingers crossed about them being in the postseason.
For sure. It was an interesting one, and everybody likes to get wins there. Another player who got a win in maybe a little bit of a different sport, you could say, is Novak Djokovic got his 17th major win and his 8th Australian Open tennis win here, Josh.
Yeah, it's a huge win for him, obviously, because he's only 3 away from Roger Federer. Djokovic has essentially dominated the Aussie Open. He's 8-0 in semis and finals. And despite not playing very well against Dominic Thiem, he still got the win. We'll see if he can contain that or carry that momentum over, rather, to the French Open, where Rafa Nadal is always going to be a tough out.
Well, and then finally, one team that as well got a win that I guess everybody's been talking about, and it has to be on most people's minds, is the Kansas City Chiefs. But now, here's our Abby St. John with more in the last minute of play.
Thanks, guys. And just like that, the Kansas City Chiefs raised the Lombardi Trophy for the first time in 50 years. The first half ended in a tie for only the 4th time in Super Bowl history. The 49ers took over the third by adding 10 to the board and leaving the Chiefs scoreless in the third. In the quarter, Patrick Mahomes threw 2 interceptions. However, the Chiefs' third quarter upset didn't hold them back as they went on to score 3 touchdowns and win the game in a 31-20 comeback. Despite throwing multiple interceptions, Patrick Mahomes was named Super Bowl MVP, making him the 3rd youngest player to receive that title. This also makes him the youngest player to receive both MVP, which he received last season, and Super Bowl MVP. Before the big game, the NFL Honors was held Saturday, where Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson won MVP. San Francisco 49ers defensive end Nick Bosa walked away with 2 awards, Pepsi's Rookie of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year. Tennessee Titans quarterback Ryan Tannehill received Comeback Player of the Year, and Jacksonville Jaguars defensive end Calais Campbell won the Honorable Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year award for his work with empowering and teaching the youth in Jacksonville through the CRC Foundation him and his family started in 2009. This has been your last minute of the play.